Hey guys, hope everything is going well. Thanks for joining us on a Friday night. We have a returning guest. Dan, what's going on, man?
Not much, mate. How are you? I'm still
Good,
coming down with the
good.
cold, actually, so
Yeah.
doing my best.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah, glad you could make it.
All good, all
Uh,
good.
all right. Steve says, "Hide your children, hide your wives. It's Hankus Pankus time." No, most definitely. Andrew Pham says, "Turn up." Yep. All right. I think we have a lot to talk about this week.
Big.
And maybe we should touch base on Nat Turner situation. I saw you left me a comment that Nat Turner did discuss the two cards that I thought he didn't question, but explain what you left on my page.
Yeah, so there was 3 additional cards that I flagged in my second video that look like they also had damage in the same order that his Triumvirate, which is the one that had the peel on there that everyone knows about now. So he addressed those on Twitter and on Blowout Forums, but he only addressed 2 of the 3. And the one that he didn't address, which is the Champions of the Court card, is definitely the most concerning of the 3, in my opinion. So the 2 that he did flag, he basically said, as I did say in my video as well, that they look like they were centering issues. It just looked like the artwork of the card as an example. And that's basically what he said. The third card that had lots of chipping, what appeared to be, and corner damage is the one that he didn't talk about. So that's where the issue is with what Nat has said. And that's, if you look at that tweet in my video where he sort of clapped back at me, that was me asking him about that third card. Why did he not comment on that third card?
Okay. So I think we messaged about that, those cards in question. And my thought process was, I discussed in the video that he may have not discussed or he may have not talked about those cards is because, hey, if you show that presentation that he did on Instagram, it will make guys like you and Omar Retro Hoops Collectibles look foolish for questioning him.
Yep.
So put your best foot forward. That's my thought process. So then he's like, oh, these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. They're amateurs, right? You know, Dan's an accountant, you know, Omar's, you know, a supply chain guy. Like, they're not professional. So maybe if you put it like that, then they'll discredit what you're saying. I mean, that's my thought process because you had good claims.
Yeah, that's how it looked, right? And I did record a video today for my weekly news video that comes out tomorrow, and I clapped back at Nat's clapback in the sense that, okay, he says guys on the internet shouldn't grade cards. Well, it turns out, you know, we can spot things better than your guys can who have it in hand, because we saw that piece of peel stuck to that card. You didn't see that. Your graders didn't see that. We saw that. Sorry. So yeah, we saw that and they didn't. And there's been other things in the past where we've spotted trimmed cards. We've spotted fake cards by looking at photos. Their graders haven't. So again, you can't really say that when, if we didn't flag it in the first place, you wouldn't have gone and got it corrected, right? So that's a really poor thing, in my opinion, for him to say.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think it would have been crazier if one of the cards he posted was, you know, found on the altered database that you've discussed. I've discussed that once in my videos. And the thing I'm just thinking out loud is, I don't think Nat Turner should be clapping back at the way that he did at you, because all these altered cards, you know, I did a video about a potential McDavid card that was flagged earlier for being altered, and then it went through Probstein. No one called it out. And then it went through PSA again, got a autograph 10, and now it's at PWCC. So it's been through 3 different firms and no one's touching that. And it's, you know, guys who don't do this for a living. You don't do this for a living. I don't do this for a living, but we've detected this, and all the guys at Blowout. So I think Nat Turner, as I appreciate him being transparent more than other CEOs, but I think he needs to be a little careful and pushing or putting or wagging the finger at guys like you.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not sure, like, if that was his intent or how frustrated he is with the process, right? But still, that's not a good look, in my opinion, especially when, like I said, if we didn't spot it, they wouldn't have spotted it. So again, very disappointing, but it could just be because he's frustrated. I know he's probably a little bit pissed off at me based on some of the conversations I've had with him. As I said in my video the other day, maybe I wasn't overly clear about the video that I was making. I thought I was. He thinks otherwise. But again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, and maybe that had something to do with it as well. But still, you know, it was just disappointing to see him clap back and then see card porn, you know, run to his defense minutes after he posted it.
Yeah, and we'll get into card porn later this podcast. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. BK Sports Cards, what's going on? Take the hobby back. Definitely, for sure. Benji says AIH Proud Boys are here. Steve says, Dan, how dare you question our overlord Nat? You peasant, you. I see those boogered up edges, Nat.
It was a few of them.
Yeah. David says, hey, Rahul and Dan, can we discuss the pumping down of Rudy with his Magic the Gathering 30th edition? If the public doesn't purchase these packs, Rudy will make a fortune selling them. I don't know too much about Magic. I don't know if you follow it. I know MTG Lion, or he changed his name. He talks a lot about it. Rudy, you know, that's where I heard the name.
Yeah, so I follow, it's from Alpha Investments, is his YouTube channel. He's got a pretty big following. He's a really good guy to watch. And a lot of people accuse him of pumping and dumping all the time as well. He's pretty interesting because he used to work in financial services. I believe he was an investment banker right at the height of the GFC, if I remember correctly, or just after it. Very, very wealthy dude, very passionate about Magic the Gathering. And he's basically put out a lot of videos in the last couple of days trying to downplay this new release from Magic, and is basically saying if people buy into it, it's going to be the end of Magic the Gathering as we know it. So I'm not a huge Magic guy, but I do watch his content every now and then because he does speak some facts. But at the same time, people have accused him all the time of pumping and dumping. So I can see why people maybe have that same point that David has just mentioned down below.
Yep. All right. So yeah, speaking of Nat Turner again, so we're both accountants, and in my opinion, even though I'm not an auditor, my opinion of Collectors Universe is that their internal controls are weak. And I've been told, I don't know if someone has told you this, I can't corroborate this, but someone told me that, okay, not everyone is allowed to grade their cards at PSA. But even if everyone is allowed to grade cards at PSA, that would be a problem, because then what? Graders could actually grade their cards.
Yep.
So I think we're running into a slippery slope either way. And the fact is, what is troubling is Nat Turner can get his cards graded, right? And he was talking to the grader regarding the situation. So I see many red flags out here. And, you know, just looking from an unbiased perspective, I would say that Nat Turner should not be submitting his cards to grade at PSA. Maybe purchase on the secondary market, fine. But grade cards, I don't think that's right, especially for higher up executives. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I share that exact same sentiment. It's obviously hard from the outside looking in to see what their control environment is actually like. But as I've said before, you only have to look at the mistakes they've made consistently over the last 2 years. And that pretty clearly indicates that it's a poor environment, in my opinion, because they've made mistakes across their whole process. It's not just incorrect grades. They've mislabeled cards. They've graded fake cards. They've sent cards to the wrong customers. They've lost people's cards. There's just so many things within their process where they appear to have these gaps that indicates they could be doing a lot better. And it just doesn't get limited to them. It's a lot of businesses within the hobby where, you know, all of a sudden it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry, if I remember correctly. And they've basically kept their processes aligned to what it was when they were like, it was just collectors buying stuff. Right now it's blown up, and there's people that are investors. There's people that are passionate about, you know, flipping cards on a day-to-day basis. Their processes and their level of risk mitigation, their risk appetite needs to now match this newfound interest within the hobby. And I don't believe it's currently doing that. I mean, I think you can say that just by the mistakes they're making fairly consistently, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the other thing, which I find to be a huge conflict of interest, someone said that it's not a conflict of interest because Nat Turner has already disclosed this, but they own Golden Auctions, right? You could do grading with Golden. You could send your cards to PSA. You could then all of a sudden, you know, have it on Golden. And guess what? Then Card Ladder would be like, hey, record sale, right? So someone may be like, hey, it's, what is it called? Vertical integration or horizontal integration, whatever that phrase is. But I'm just looking at, I'm like, that just doesn't seem right, especially when basically I'm highlighting this tomorrow in a video. But you know that Futura card for the Grand Prix 2006?
Yep.
So Lewis. So it was a pop one in March, right? And then 2 months later, it became a pop two. So yeah, sure, someone may have expedited it to PSA and then it gets on Golden, but it just seems strange. Like within 2 months, it turns from a pop one. That sale was $312,000, and then when it's a pop two, it's like what, 292. Now it's what, $36,000. But that's another story. So I just see conflicts of interest, and maybe someone knows something on the inside and they market something and then they get the commission. It doesn't look right to me.
It's like the threat exists, especially with that vertical integration. I see Retro Hoops has left a comment, but it's like I'd be shocked if that kind of integration could occur in a country like Australia, as an example. We typically have really strong like controls from a regulation perspective to prevent that kind of stuff. And you know, you've just given a pretty good example where you could, if somebody wanted to, manipulate basically all the information regarding the sale of a card and imply to the market that it is doing a lot better than what it actually is. And there's definitely a possibility for people to put a veil over that transparency, right? Hide that ability for people to understand things from a transparent perspective. And I don't like it personally. Whether it's actually happening or not is another question. But again, as I say all the times in my videos, right, it's the perception and the threat to these things that is the most important thing, right? And that's why you need to do whatever you can as a business, as an individual, to keep yourself at arm's length and prevent those things from happening. And sort of the stuff we're seeing within the hobby, it's very clouded, and it's not just limited to collectors, right? It's happening all across the hobby.
Indeed. And Omar, thanks for joining us, man, in the comment section. You're actually one of my favorite channels during the pandemic. So very analytical mind. All right. Let's look at some other comments. LT, what's going on? Two goats of the card hobby. No, I'm not a goat. Keep exposing all the fake higher ups. They can't hide forever. Ziggy says, you dip. Why did the breakers dip? All right. Let's look at a few other comments, and I'll get Trading Cards Immortal. What's up, everyone? Hey, how's it going, man? So I'm just thinking, going back to Nat Turner, here's something that may be more conspiratorial, but it wouldn't be far-fetched based on the things that I've seen. So there's group submitters, right? With PSA, SGC, et cetera, right? What doesn't stop someone technically from grading their own card if they're a grader and then they go through a group submitter? Hopefully this is not happening, but I'm just like, where's the control environment? I mean, I didn't see, like, if you go to one of these group dealers, they say that, hey, if you work for PSA, you can't submit the cards. I didn't see that disclaimer. And PSA doesn't know the customers, from my understanding. So what stops someone from like sending in a scarce card, 1 out of 1, and they're actually part of the grading process? I think that is a huge can of worms, in my opinion.
I would love for PSA to do like a deep dive on their grading process and explain some of those things, because like me as an auditor, that'd be one of the first questions I'd ask, right? Like the first thing you do when you're trying to understand what level of controls or what a company's control environments actually looks like within a process is you'd ask questions like that. What would happen if somebody sent in what if a grader sent in a card through a group submitter? What would happen if the CEO's cards got put in through the process? How often do your reviews occur? How often does something that I grade as a grader get reviewed by somebody else? All those things. These are all the questions you would ask, and you'd ensure that the business had things in place to track and monitor that sort of stuff. You know, I was under the impression that PSA, as an example, had a 4-eye check with regard to their grading process. Every card had 2 people looking at it at a minimum. Based on some of the things I've heard in the last couple of days, it doesn't look like that. It only looks like 1 person is looking at a card. I can't corroborate that myself. But again, if that was true, that would speak to, again, a really poor control environment. You need to have not only reviews of the card by multiple people, but you need to have those reviews being reviewed by other people as well. You do some kind of sampling. Like, I'd have a lot of fun if I was the internal audit team, to be honest, because there's lots of questions that I'd be asking to make sure that this sort of stuff doesn't happen. And some people will say, I know I'm standing a little bit off topic here. Some people will say, well, PSA is grading 1 million cards a month. That's not an excuse, because when you have a strong control environment, yes, things will increase as you're doing more work, right? That's only natural, but the error rate shouldn't increase. And the things we're seeing from PSA, like I've said, indicate that they're pretty poor across the board. So they need to fix those things, because volume shouldn't drive those errors that we're seeing. They're just terrible errors.
Yeah. Speaking of volume, and once again, I'm bringing up Retro Hoops. He did videos, and he thinks that they're grading a ridiculous amount of cards per minute per grader. So things like this is going to fall through the cracks. I get it. They have a huge backlog. I get it. It's a huge way to make a great amount of money, but then the consequences for them, it's not us nitpicking. It's just for their own interest. If they're going through all these cards, it could hurt them in the long run. If they have poor QC and they're giving the wrong grades and missing, items on the CEO's card itself. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
100%. I think that part of the reason they don't care. Some of these businesses do not care because people are so willing to ignore and flip their card, right? You say that all the time. Like, go watch card show vlogs, and I know those people are not like a true indication of everyone within the hobby, but you've got these people that are talking about buying a player, prospecting on that player, saying they're such a good player, and then immediately selling it to somebody else who's then going to do the same thing. And they're basically doing like this little dance between each other where they both don't really give two shits about the card, but they're pretending they do, but they just want to make that money. And people that are submitting to PSA for the vast majority of that volume are probably the same people, in my opinion. They don't care about the error rates. They don't care if PSA graded incorrectly. All they care about is selling that card onto the next person, make as much money as possible, and then moving on to the next card. Like, eventually the music's going to stop and people are going to be stuck with cards. And like you said, they're going to have grades on them that are not accurate. And that's why I always say to people, buy the freaking card, not the label, right? Look at the card yourself. Hold these companies accountable. Ask these questions, because the general population of this hobby at the moment don't really give two shits. And that's what's driving a lot of it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the thing is, maybe we could segue into this. So PSA has people, or part of the Collectors Universe umbrella, on YouTube, right? Some people like them, some people hate them, but this is just a fact. Card Ladders on YouTube. We have She Collects Cards. There's Carlos from, I think, Because I'm Carlos. He's part of PSA Canada in some way, shape, or form. And I'm just looking at it. They have, spokesmen, in the hobby here on YouTube, right? Social media. So not only they have Golden, they have PSA, they have Card Ladder, and they have spokespeople. And then I've seen, I think Sunday League Investors, he's a buddy of Curator. Someone showed me that there's ads for Golden, right? And then, my tinfoil hat conspiracy, like Hobby Shark keeps on saying that the higher ups may be controlling card porn, or there's some sort of quid pro quo thing going on. That's what I'm getting from Hobby Shark. So, and we've talked about in the last video or last interview where you think that card porn's sentiment has changed in some way, shape, or form. You've done videos on this as well. So I don't know, like, then you have not the media, but you have the information that is probably going to be pro collectors, and then maybe some of these other bigger companies, because they want to prop up the whole system. I don't know. It just seems like
that is definitely what it looks like, in my opinion. Like, it does look like that, right? It has that vibe. And I know a lot of people talk about, you mentioned Sunday League Investors and some of these other vloggers and stuff and YouTube content creators where they're doing ads for these companies, so on and so forth. But a lot of them are just young kids. They don't know any better, for the most part, at least from what I've seen. So they're just putting out content and getting sponsorships and saying things, and they don't understand, like, in my opinion, like the level of manipulation that is potentially occurring as well, where you've got these companies, doing their thing, marketing right, doing their thing, but they're pushing it from every angle to give that instance. And then you've got places like card porn, content creators like card porn, favoring, so on and so forth. It doesn't give a good look for some of these companies either. It's just very messy, where they're pushing an agenda, getting everyone to focus in on that company, hating on certain companies. When it's all coming from all angles, it's hard to argue against if you're like a neutral, right? You're like, oh, who do I want to grade with? Everyone's saying PSA, let's go with PSA. Oh, Golden is the one to go with, right? PWCC shit, everyone's saying PWCC shit. Like, it's very controlled messaging.
Yeah, because I looked at one of their posts from last year. Someone, I think Cartel, told me about, like, they were calling out people with sponsorships. And I messaged Card Porn about it earlier this year. Said, hey, can you tell me where this post was? And they sent it to me, whoever was running it. And then they're going after Goldberg, who was on the show. and I think him and Cage Lawyer had HGA as a sponsor, I believe, and Star Stock. So they called him out for that. They called out, I think, Card Talk Pod or whatever. I think CC2 is part of it. And they're going after other people. I'm like, okay, you want to call yourself the watchdog, that's fine. But then, like I said, if you're not going after Ken Golden, you know, and trying to be objective, or Nat Turner, I didn't see any posts lately, then something seems up, right? If you're going after, you know, smaller fish, I'm not trying to diminish, you know, Goldberg or anything like that, but, you know, Ken Golden's, you know, pretty big in the hobby. Yep. And you're not going after them. You're not going after collectors, you know. That's just a red flag, you know, just background.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be like, I think I said in my video, like if you want to make 3 videos on PWCC, it doesn't then mean you need to make 3 posts or 3 videos on Golden Co, right? It just means when things come up, you need to flag them, and it doesn't look like, especially from Cardboard's perspective and a few other people within the hobby, actually, it doesn't look like that stuff is being done as, you know, often or as fairly, in my opinion, because we've seen things like this Nat Turner situation. So Retro Hoops did his video, and then I did mine. And then it was like a week later, if I remember correctly, before Cardboard made their post on it, which is fine. Like, they can take their time to do it. But what was very strange was that literally within minutes of Nat Turner putting up that post on Twitter, showing what the card actually looked like, they had done their own post. And then you see something today, actually, with regards to Cardboard around PWCC. And you might be a bit interested in this because they sort of went after PWCC regarding the sale of the Luka Doncic Logo Man RPA, 1 of 1. And they were very snarky towards PWCC in their post. They've since edited it. You can sort of see basically what they said by what everyone commented, because lots of employees from PWCC responded, actually. But what was interesting is they were sort of implying that they hope the seller gets some of the buyer's premium. And what was funny about that is if you do some research about PWCC, you know that if a card sells over a certain price, that the seller's actually going to get some of that premium. So they did a bit of a clap back at you saying that you didn't do your research with regards to the post on them. But you know what? They've made this sort of like hating on PWCC post, giving them a backhanded compliment with regards to, you know, the buyer's premium element, not realizing that if you go to their website and you quickly Google Premier Auction PWCC buyer's premium, you'll see that the seller actually gets the vast majority of that amount. So they're trying to be smart asses to PWCC, but they've made themselves look dumb. And it goes to my point earlier as well, where they want to talk shit. You can talk shit about everyone equally, right? Just do it fairly. Do it all the time. Don't hate on someone like AIH, like you, right, for not doing your research, because that's what they said. It's not that you didn't do your research, right? It's just what they said. That they themselves haven't done the same freaking thing. So that's where I get frustrated with them, especially lately. That's why I say their sentiment has changed. I know I just went on a bit of a rant, but those are the things that indicate their sentiment has changed.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So they have what, 70,000 followers, right? I have what, close to 1,000 now, or whatever it is. And they responded to me indirectly without calling me out by name. I'm thinking, wait. You have that many followers and you decide to call me out indirectly. And then not only that, after they did that 2 days in a row, that's when you're talking about they posted it's like Lameme James thing about Nat Turner, right?
Names,
and
yep.
grading. They said nothing for a week, right? Until I called them out. So that seemed weird that they actually posted something after I was doing video after video after video. Yeah, I may have gone overboard on that, but like that's when they started to, I don't know if I hit a nerve or maybe somewhat of what I'm saying is the truth or what you're saying is the truth.
Yeah, it's just weird, right?
It's just weird. And, you know, I know that Hobby Shark is, what is it called? You know, I know they have something against Hobby Shark because Hobby Shark calls them out all the time.
Yeah.
So they may have gone after Hobby Shark and me in that post. But in regards to PWCC, just like to be unbiased here. So remember that post they had with the real 27 guy? He's at PWCC.
Yep.
Yeah. So they posted how he may have found some cards that were fake or something like that.
Yeah, the uncut sheet, right?
Yeah, uncut sheet. So maybe, you know, I don't think they portrayed PWCC in a negative light with that post there
Mhm.
because, you know, it was on Golden Auction. So I just want to, you know, be, you know, fair.
Yeah, so it's not like it's all the time, right? It's just
Yeah,
little things like that
it's
post
little
today. I
thing.
think the post today is a good indicator of that. Just for the wording they've used about PWCC, it reads very negatively, in my opinion. And then I just thought it was funny that they clapped back at people for not doing their research, and they've gone off tilt here in this post, implying that PWCC is not going to give the seller any of the buyer's premium, where if you do your research, you know they do. So again, I just think that's a bit silly. Pot calling the kettle black, basically.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that, or regarding card porn, I never remember them like blocking people. I mean, I got blocked. People were getting blocked left and right, and just for, you know, questioning them. So it's just quite interesting. Like, this is not the behavior that I'm not used to. They used to be like so edgy, and now it's
I think like maybe their account has been sold, right? That's just hearsay. That's just like some questions that people are asking. But you can't. I don't think you can argue that their sentiment hasn't changed, right? If you only look at their posts and you see the words they use and the way they approach things is vastly different to what they did in the past. And I think probably the most likely situation is that maybe they've become friends now with top dogs within the hobby, people like Ken Golden, as an example, people like Nat Turner, and that is somehow impacting on them reporting on things, right? Because maybe they're getting more information in the background. So by the time they come to post something, they don't post it, or they're like, well, Nat is my friend, as an example. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. But you know what? Let's ask him a question before we decide to post this, or let's just wait to see what happens before we post this. Like whether that I talk about this all the time as well, like the independence element there, where there's a conflict of interest where they are friends with them. Maybe because they are friends, that's what's holding them back from posting immediately. So those kinds of things, I think, is probably the most important element. Not so much the fact that they've maybe been bought out or they're sponsored. I think maybe it's just because they're friends with these people, and that's impacting on their ability to respond.
Oh, yeah. So I was talking to one dude in Australia, and he said that he allegedly talked to card porn, and this was before it was named card porn. And allegedly, he's said that he's friends with Golden, right? So, yes. And
Well, I've spoken to a lot of people as well. A lot of people from Melbourne in Australia know who the guy is, who know who 100% the original owner was. He still frequents a few places down here as well. So he might still be the owner, right? I don't think that should be the big question. The big question should be their sentiment and are they biased towards certain people, because that's probably a bit more realistic and things we can actually talk to improve. Because if you look at their page, you can see that sort of stuff firsthand. And that Nat Turner example that I just gave is the best indication of that, as is the post from PWCC today.
Yep. All right, let's look at some of the comments here. Wow, there's so many comments. South Florida Cards and Collectibles. Hey, y'all, what's up? How's it going, man? Ryan McClanahan says, one thing we're seeing with FTX is that the FTX and SEC didn't have any oversight on this company, and I see the same lack of oversight with these grading and auction companies. So I'll give my own thoughts about it. I don't like regulation in general, excessive regulation, but I do understand when you don't have regulation, it's the wild, wild west. And in an industry like sports cards, there's a lot of hanky-panky that goes on. And I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, do you think that we need more regulation, or should it be like outside forces like you and me and others putting pressure on these companies, or should it be a balance of both? Because
I think it should be a balance of both. Sorry,
Okay.
I cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just like I think there needs to be regulation in elements of the hobby, and I'm an external auditor, so obviously I'm pro-regulation where possible. But I think it needs to be limited to certain areas. Like I can see 100%, especially here in Australia, breaking being regulated in some capacity eventually. And I wouldn't be surprised if that sort of happens in the US in some capacity as well, because there's elements of it that's very aligned to gambling. And I think that sort of stuff needs to be under control, because that's one element of the hobby where regulation, I think, would improve it. You've got so many people out there that are trying to take advantage of situations. We've just seen a video from Sports Card Radio highlighting potentially a breaker that's stealing cards. I've had instances in the past as well with breakers. I think that's an area that could be benefited from regulation. I think, these graders as well. Like when you're talking about this vertical integration that Collectors Universe has, okay, they need to be looked at from a independent party. And whether they do have a third party auditor looking at them, they maybe do, maybe don't. But because they're not listed anymore, which I don't think they are, that level of oversight is probably not as much as it should be. And I think that I think it needs some kind of inquiry regulation in there, just because of the manipulation that you could have. Where you could have people taking in cards and then moving them on, indicating they're worth certain things with regards to golden auctions, and then getting that into their price index, so on and so forth. You've basically literally got the end-to-end ability to manipulate the prices of cards, which then benefits everyone in that chain.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. The only thing that I think out loud is how many regulators would understand what's going on. Like, we're in this hobby, we get it, but just like trying to convince the average, lawmaker here in the US, congressman, I mean, they'd probably go up to like Kent Golden, like, how should we do this, right? And then they create the rules, the regulations that benefit the big guys. So that's just my only concern
for sure.
with that.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, let's just look at some of the comments here. Sorry if I can't get to all of them here. There's just a bunch. Diversified Collectibles, were they afraid of their followers looking at your content? It's talking about card porn. Because if what you say is so ridiculous, then why would they be afraid of people hearing it? Yeah. If I were, card porn and I thought that what he's saying is ridiculous, I probably wouldn't have said anything. I just, talk with other people like, this dude's nuts.
But that's part of this change in sentiment you've seen from them, right? Because them 12 months ago wouldn't have given two shits what you said, or they would have put you on blast, but they wouldn't have blocked you. It just seems it's just very weird that they did that to somebody that has, the voice in the hobby that, you have, that I have. Right? It's not that big. So to get that caught up, like to get your panties in a twist over that is a bit laughable in my opinion.
Yeah.
Which is what makes me think maybe they are friends with certain people, and those certain people have said, you know what, you need to shut this shit down because we can't have this kind of conversation happening.
Yeah, exactly. That could have been it. And, the strange part we know this for a fact. A box break was done with Drake and Ken Golden, and they addressed it saying that, hey, we know Drake. And I'm going to discuss it where they may actually know Drake, which I found to be crazy at first, but they may actually be telling the truth. But they did hang out with Ken Golden, and they did at least hang out with one of the card ladder people, Christina, at least. But Ziggy is saying that no, is with the other ones too, but I have to do more research on it. So this is a fact, right? These two events did occur.
Mm-hmm.
And Drake alleges in that video that he found card porn through, what is it called? TikTok. That's the video that I saw. Yep. And the other weird part is, I have to be careful in how I say this, but it's like kids with cards or something like that. And it says managed by card porn. And I'm thinking to myself, why would card porn manage that? Is someone asking them? Are they doing that on their own? And, if someone wants to get more kids in the hobby and there's nothing, heinous or anything nefarious, that's fine. But it will make people think that, hey, this is a bit strange. And I don't know your thoughts about that, because why would they just post that? I wouldn't post pictures, of kids holding cards, right? Just randomly, even though I have a profile on Instagram.
Yeah, no, it's very. But see, from their perspective, they'll say, well, that's the same thing they do on their main page anyway, because they very rarely post their own content, right? They're taking things from everywhere else, basically curating it. So maybe from their perspective, they think they're doing the same, but it just gets a bit weird when you're doing it with other people's kids, in my opinion. And we've seen people have actually complained and asked to have their videos taken down because they've often done it without permission as well. So, I don't think it's a good look. I think it's very strange. I don't think they should be doing it. I can understand them wanting to get kids involved in the hobby, but there's better ways to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to ask the question, is someone asking them to make that page? That's what I'm... Because Hobby Shark, he had some sort of screenshot indicating that card porn had some sort of... I believe this is what happened, right? Don't quote me on this, right? If it's wrong, let me know. Where there was a box breaking going on, but then you have to go to that Kids with Card or Kids with Care or something like that, or whatever that page is called, for that box break. So, why is card porn telling people to go to that page? if that screenshot was correct from what I saw.
I think I vaguely remember something like that where they did a break for kids. I want maybe it's just additional revenue stream for them, right? Getting another account with tens of thousands of followers to get some revenue generating on
It's
on
only
Instagram.
1,200. It's only like 1,200.
So it probably hasn't worked in the end for them.
Yeah.
But maybe that was their logic. I'm not sure. But I just think it's very strange.
Yeah. Thing is, like, I know Jeff Wilson, I think in a post, Hobby Shark also put down that, hey, they want more kids in the hobby or something like that. And Jeff Wilson has a page for kids, with his son. And,
His
trying to get more
his
kids
son has a
that
YouTube.
way.
Yep. His son has a YouTube channel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. The Truth is on Sports Card Radio podcast has been over for a decade. Yup. Yep, their channel's been blowing up.
Yeah, huge.
Big time.
Like 20,000 subs.
Yeah, it was like, I think at 6,000 subs, and then now it's at what, like 20,000, close to 20,000?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Game Time Gallery, Golden Auction is known to extend bidding to another day or two if the bids are low. They cite technical issues as the reason. I mean, I've seen them saying technical issues. Is it technical issues? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's all part of the hustle. It's all part of the fun. It's all part of the game.
Yep. Steve says this push for kids and women in the hobby is strictly about money. Yeah, they're trying to get more people, and with Fanatics, I don't know what they're gonna do.
Like, if you want to advocate for more kids in the hobby, they should be pressuring these freaking manufacturers to start charging appropriate fees for boxes of cards and not put things in stores that have shit cards in them and charge a fortune. Like, there's better ways to advocate having more kids in the hobby. Like I said in a video that I did, I think like 12 months ago now, where there was some scalpers, right? Going to the store, taking all these cards, and then basically leaving nothing there for the kids. That's the thing you need to fix if you want kids to be passionate about the hobby, right? Because if they can't go to the store and have that experience with their mum or dad to buy a pack of cards, maybe it's a treat they get once a month, and they don't get to have that experience of buying those cards and spending that time with their family, albeit that might be one small example. If they can't do that, that kid might not be interested in cards in 10 years' time, right? And yes, there are other ways for kids to be interested in cards now, going to card shows, flipping cards, so on and so forth. But there are elements that they need to do better at, and that's one area. Make freaking cards more affordable for kids. The fact you've got boxes of cards, especially here in Australia, $1,200 for a box of Prism, like, that shit is not good enough.
Oh yeah, for sure. LT says, so the card influencers who only care about their money will give kids the wrong advice and have them spend money to benefit them. Sounds like the candy industry. You make an interesting point. So the card industry, or the higher ups, so want more kids. So is it trying to get more suckers in, or do they really get kids about collecting? I think they just view them as, hey, more money in our pockets, rather than, hey, if you get collectors, if you have good collectors, then maybe that would actually be better for the hobby long term, rather than to, train them to be gamblers.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to, like, at the end of the day, they're just going to keep pushing things, pushing product, pushing up prices, pushing up huge volumes of things, having high error rates, because they know the hobby has got a short memory, right? They're going to do it for 2 years. When things eventually crack and stop and people are like, hang on a minute, what are you doing? This is bullshit. Then they know that people are still going to be there to buy the cards at the end of the day. Like, the hobby's going to forget this little period of 2 years where things have been crazy. Things will, like, even out, flatten, and they'll still be there. They'll still be there to buy cards. They're just basically printing money while they can.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the industry, they thought that, hey, this could be like 2021. I'm not trying to, hit on Jeff Wilson, but he thought that, hey, we'd have another strong year. And then this year is just like completely the opposite.
Yeah. I know Jeff gets a lot of hate, but I think he's positioned himself pretty well in the hobby now with some of the content he puts out. He's definitely, I think, made some positive change. He's got his own issues, but again, I think he's one of the few that's seen the sign of the times, and he's starting to do things a little bit differently, which is good for him, I guess. Everyone tells me he's a really nice guy in person. I've never met him, so maybe that's just what he's trying to do on camera.
Yeah, from what I've observed, his videos tend to be a little more objective. They're having that debate panel. I think that's better. I think they needed that in 2021. And then after a lot of pressure, then I think that's what happened, in my opinion.
like their cards on the table, they've had a few topics on there that I've called out for being like ridiculously dumb. I think in one of them he wanted more parallels in Prism basketball. I was like, mate, what are you talking about? We've got enough freaking parallels as it is.
Way too
But
much.
that ability for them to have, you know, two differing opinions and debate them is a really, really good thing. And that just shows, you know, the sign of the times that some of these people in the hobby need to shift away from, or shift towards, sorry, because so many are still so overly positive. Like, I don't want to get to that rabbit hole, but there's just a lot of really too positive content out there. And these guys are going to be like left talking about nothing when nobody cares about that sort of stuff anymore. So it's good to see Jeff shift in that direction.
Yep, that's good. Hobby Champ says Lameme James is more objective than Cardport now. Lameme James is a funny guy, and Lameme James doesn't call himself the hobby watchdog. So,
Yep.
So that's what I'd say. I do like his work though. I
I
know.
think he's based in Singapore.
He's based in Singapore.
I believe so. Yeah.
Well,
Because
I didn't
he's
know
always
that.
in Australia, so I think we're going to try and catch up for a burger and a beer next time he's in Sydney.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting. Yeah, I know Ziggy always says I don't like Lameme James, but all of these BS $50,000 buying challenges are weak. Let's see a $50,000 selling video. They can't do it. Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? I think that was just crazy.
It's weird from a few perspectives, right? Because when I first looked at this, my mind immediately went to like an accounting question. I think I did that in my video where I thought about how they're actually going to account for this. Are they going to treat this, you know, 200K as revenue when really
Yeah.
it shouldn't be, because it's like they're using their own money. Given that they've got a lot of investors, there's some manipulation opportunities there for them to do that. But then also some people flagged me, well, what does this mean for comps? You're going to have now $200,000 of artificial sales at card shows. Is that going to push the prices of cards up? Is it then going to do the same thing on whatnot? It just seems very weird. And I can confirm that, or at least it's been discussed with me, that basically whatnot gets the money back,
Oh,
not the content creator.
so I'm assuming they must get a marketing expense at least for that, right?
I'm not sure. I think it's just the content for their YouTube channel is the benefit they get.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I'm just thinking this sounds crazy. I think Cards and Comics, he's a YouTube channel. He said they could maybe do this for the accounting, which I would not agree with, right? So bear in mind, some of the guys don't know accounting, so I'll try to explain it as best as possible. So the marketing, you know, if Jeff Wilson gets $50,000, right, to buy an inventory, so not an inventory or whatever you want to call it, I would put it against work in process. But do you think that they could just like put it as a marketing expense and then like
I
do that, and then the other side would be revenue? I know it sounds insane, but I would not do that. I'd probably put in work in process, and then at the end, you know, I'd credit that and then put the debit to COGS.
Yeah, which I think is what they should be doing. But my inclination is they've probably done the other thing where, you know, if they, like, you got to understand from a, and it's going to be a bit technical, when you're testing revenue accounts, okay, at a business from as an auditor, you know, it's always going to have a risk of fraud attached to it, right? Because revenue is one area where management can manipulate to uplift, to make their bonuses a bit better, right? You've got all these misalignments within the process to make sure, or sorry, to allow them to try and manipulate things to make their bonuses look better. So I think in this instance, the first question I'd ask if I was the auditor would be, okay, well, how are you treating that? Because, you know, the opportunity for fraud there, for manipulation, would be them to treat it as management, marketing expense, and then shifting it into revenue. And it should not be revenue. It should not be revenue. Like, if you want to treat it as revenue, it should be treated as revenue is anything above and beyond what that 200 grand was. Let's say they give out 200 grand to all these people. The only thing they should be treating as revenue is the fee they've earned on those sales within their platform.
Indeed.
You can't shift 200 grand out of marketing and put that into revenue, right?
I know it sounds insane, but you don't know what's going on. I mean, we saw this FTX thing. I just did a video on my other channel. I'll upload. The internal controls were insane. So at this point, I've seen everything. You know, I grew up with, you know, the Enron situation in high school. You know, that's why they have socks. So, I mean, that was more insane than Enron, what just happened. But
yeah, from what I've read, I haven't done a deep dive into it yet because I've been sick. But by all reports, I would have loved to have been a fly in the wall when they're looking at that control process, right? Because they were listed, correct? Were they listed? FTX?
It's bankrupt now.
But were they listed? Were they public?
No, they were not. They were not public traded.
Yeah. So that's part of the reason why. And it goes to some of the things we say in the hobby as well. You've got all these new startups that have no idea what they're doing. They have these really shitty processes in them, and people think they don't. Well, look what happens when things do go wrong. You can't just trust people because they look nice on a camera or they say nice things.
Oh yeah. Trading Cards Immortal says Fanatics actually has their own slab cards I've seen on their website. Won't be surprised if you see more of them going forward. I think is that for autographs? Have you seen that?
I have ages ago, I think, but I remember there was some talk, weren't they looking at buying or being acquiring one of the graders or something along those lines? Because there was some talk about like newly released product being sold already slabbed. There was a rumor about that a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's kind of hard for them to raise funds to buy up all these. Anyway, let me rephrase this. I mean, to try to buy up more entities would be challenging if they've already have Panini on their radar. So I think they have to take it a step at a time, in my opinion. But yeah, I think what Fanatics is also going to be doing, they're going to be buying up influencers, like advertisements.
Well, I think that stuff has already happened in the
Yeah, it's happening now, but then they're going to do even more than PSA, in my opinion. And I think it's just going to be really, just watch the content in a few years. So go PSA collectors, they have the money to pay out people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Fanatics is going to come like for the other people that haven't signed up, or they may sway some people from collectors. So I think that like our content is probably going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, to be honest.
Yeah, no, because they can't control us, right? We're not going to take like the advertisement dollars. So I don't know.
But it's just like I've said it before on the channel as well, where you've got these influencers that are doing things and they're saying things to you as a viewer. Not a lot of these guys are in their mid-20s. They've like just graduated college or just graduated high school, and they're putting out this content. They've got no life experience. They've got no like business acumen, and that's not a knock on them, right? Because they're a little bit innocent, they're a little bit ignorant, and that's okay. But they just say things on behalf of these companies, and they don't realize the impacts their words have on their viewers. So when you have things like Mark's Cards telling people to go out and use this service because they're really nice people, it's like, well, now people have gone and done that, and look what's happened to them. And you're going to see the same sort of stuff with regards to some of these sponsorships where people just don't understand that, okay, not all money is good money, right? Like you can still take that money, but still don't lose your objectivity, right? Ask these questions. Don't just say these things that the companies want you to say, because that's how people get, your viewers get burned. And some of them do that accidentally, some of them do it intentionally. So that's very disappointing to see.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that you're saying that Mark's Cards. So if you watch some of his videos, he had some charity events to show like how much of a good guy he is. And then I see the Backyard Bros, I see from time to time charity this, charity that. And then we see stories of, them involved in potential hanky panky. I'm like, I see. You want to, in my opinion, hide behind charity, but we know what's most likely going on.
Yeah, and I think that's just the messaging you have to give people, right? Like I said it in my video today, it's not out yet, where just because I say something or disagree with somebody doesn't mean I hate that person, right? And just because you see somebody doing charity work doesn't mean they're a good person, right? Just treat every instance independently and objectively, right? Ask questions. Don't just see a guy doing a good deed and or think that he's a good person, right? Like you can't trust what people are doing on camera. That's all I got to say.
Oh yeah, exactly. I don't even think some of the deals that go on are actual deals. I think some of them are just made up for comps. Next topic is the great Curator. He always says that I pick on him. I'm not trying to pick on him here, but in his video, he called a follower of mine an idiot just for asking a question about, hey, is it a conflict of interest if you have a Star Wars index, right? Because, he's dealing in Star Wars. I believe Merle is posting some of those cards for sale on eBay, and there's an index, tied to it. He's on the show with Curator. So I'm thinking, okay, it may not be material now, but think down the road when more cards are added and the index gets larger. So I view this, from a materiality perspective, trouble in the future. If people let them get away with it now, what will stop them for just adding more cards, and you have high-end cards in the future. Regards to, I think that's a problem in the future.
Yeah, and it's been good to see actually market movers come out. I think they did a video somewhere where they spoke about them fixing their communication associated with this moving forward. Like, they didn't intend for it to come across the way it did. Like, they wanted to more openly communicate that no, it was his favorite cards. They're not cards he owns, at least not all of them. So if they ever do something like this again, they're going to be a bit more transparent with what's happening in the background, which I think is good to see from them. But again, the Great Curator, it was pretty funny because if you watched a little bit earlier in the stream, and even though he blocks me, I still watch his stuff every now and then because I watch everybody's stuff, where he said something like, I think it was referred to you or somebody else, maybe it was Sports Card Radio. He's like, people that call people idiots, like they're not good people. He said something along those lines, and then when he blocked the follower, I think he's a mutual follower of ours, called him an idiot when he blocked him. It's like, mate, you can't pick and choose. And that's what the worst thing is about that guy, right? Because he says things, but then does what he hates on other people for doing, right? He does the same thing. It's like, you can't call people something and say something negatively about them and then get angry at that, and then you do the same freaking thing to somebody else. It's not how life works, mate.
Yeah,
it's
I mean, like,
crazy.
Like he told Sports Car Cartel when he asked them a question, may have been, a little, I don't think it was aggressive, but he asked him a little challenging question, and he told him to shut up. He took screenshots before, I believe, he got blocked. So I'm like,
he's just weird. I think he wants the attention, that guy. I think, let me just find them, because I actually posted on that video and he did respond. He's begging for attention from Sports Card Radio. Like, he's begging for it. Like, he wants them to do a video on him. He's baiting them hard. Like, he really wants them to talk about him, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think what he said in that live stream.
I think I don't know who I had this conversation with, or maybe I said it on one of my videos. I think what he's doing is he's trying to say all these things, like maybe to not to stir me up, just so then I'll talk about it. And then Sports Card Radio is going to be watching me talk about it, maybe. And then he's going to go after, or they're going to go after Curator. And then that gets him more followers. I don't know if that's a strategy now.
I think it is. I think he, like, whether he believes all the things he says, I don't know. I think he's definitely playing a character. I think he definitely wants to get attention, and he's really hoping that Sports Card Radio talk about him again, just based on the things he said. I can see through that pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a smart guy. He's not dumb.
He is. No, he's not. He's very manipulative. He's a lawyer, right? So
he's a lawyer.
That's my gut feeling.
That's
fine. That's what you want to do. But like, lean into if you want to play that character, lean into it, right? Don't just freaking block people. Like, no joke.
Maybe he's doing that now on purpose to be like, oh, people are going to talk about it, and then more people talk about it, more people are going to crap, and then you get more attention that way as card prices are going down.
Yeah, he's just a like very strange dude. Again, I don't hate anybody within the hobby, right? Unless you're an out-and-out criminal. I think there's a lot of things he could be doing better. He's definitely backtracked on a lot of the things he said, or said he didn't say things with regards to manipulation and pumping and dumping, but lots of people do that in the hobby. It's just not good enough. I wish he wouldn't shy away from that element and just say, you know what, I stuffed up. I said this. I shouldn't have said this. But him not saying that and then him doubling down and blocking people does not speak too well about him as an individual, in my opinion.
Yeah. Steve says, I argued with the Curator fanboy last night. Yeah, I saw that as on my Instagram page. All right. Benji says, Curator is a mediator by profession. A mediator is responsible for listening to two differing opinions and provide an impartial solution to a problem. Can you imagine him doing that? I think I could, because go ahead.
No, I can see him doing that just because, like, he's like you said, he's very intelligent. So I can tell by the way he talks that he's I don't think manipulative is the right word, but that's sort of how he like drives the conversation, right? He's aware of what he's doing. He's aware of what he's saying. He puts on that he's maybe not across it. So in that mindset, if you've got somebody that can do that, like, that's what a mediator is, right? You're essentially manipulating the conversation for where you want it to go.
Yep. Yeah. So isn't it crazy? New topic. What's his name? Breakout Cards. The dude allegedly was threatened with litigation just for filming.
Yeah, very strange. So
filming a potential deal. I think that's what it was, right?
It was essentially for filming and trying to do deals without paying a vendor fees, what the promoter took umbrage to.
Yeah, I think
took
that's
offense
great.
to, which I think is mental, right? Like I'm not sure what's happened since then, but and maybe Ryan from Breakout Cards probably shouldn't have posted it on social media. But at the same time, you've got somebody messaging you like that and asking you to make things right. It was like something out of The Sopranos to an extent, where like what was going to happen if you didn't do it right? What did he have to make right? I just found the whole situation very strange, and again, very strange from a promoter to do that. You want influencers like influence to go to your show and make content because that gets people excited to go to your show, right? It just seems to go against everything that a promoter should be trying to do.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking out loud, is this going to be the future of shows, like in the US at least, and maybe internationally, where the card shows are not making as much money because less people are going and also the economy is down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then they may be like, hey, we could go after people that are potentially making deals and they're not authorized to do so because they're not dealers. They didn't pay the premium to get a
Yeah.
table. And I think there's some ownership at I mean, people who run the national, I think that may be the future, which sounds crazy, but it's just
Yeah,
weird.
like maybe there's some pressures on the promoter in the background that's made him be like maybe they're not getting paid as much money anymore per table or something along those lines. Maybe shows are starting to decline based on what I've seen. They haven't. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe that's the pressure on this guy's mind to then try and go out and be angry because he's frustrated that they're not making as much money. Like I can understand from their perspective as well. Like they've got to pay insurance, is my understanding for like the vendors, basically the dealers selling things. So maybe there's an element of that associated with it. Like, if something happened, they'd be liable. I don't know how that works from an insurance perspective, but maybe some of that is the questioning. But at the same time, like it's just dumb. Like say something to the person in private. Say to the lady, you know what, you can't ask people as they're leaving if they want to buy your cars, right? You need to get a table. You need to leave. Like do it that way. Don't go on this guy in private and then the guy that was trying to buy the cards or had someone approach him, it's not his fault. Right? You go to a card show, people do deals all the time. You're gonna say that's not allowed anymore. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, yeah. Steve says, if he paid an entrance fee, what's the issue? And if the show didn't charge, what's the legal ground? Yeah, I don't know what's the legal ground if you didn't sign, a contract. But it's private property. I'm not a lawyer. So
Yeah, it's just a weird. Neither am I. So maybe we can ask the great curator on this.
this is where we need it. Harport, Beagleton, he hurt the vendors. The promoter is protecting them. I mean, you could look at it go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd say so. I think this guy responded on one of my comments. Like that's a fair element, but at the same time, I don't think it really hurts the vendors because you want more opportunity, more options for people to buy things at a show, right? So if there's more people selling things, you're going to have more people happy to attend that show, right? So I think a busier show is a better show. Maybe not always the case, but that's what I would think. So if I was a vendor, I'd want as many people there as possible selling cards. Yes, they didn't pay a fee. Chase the lady to pay the fee, right? But don't go after Ryan, who just had someone walk up to him and say, "Do I look at my cards?" Right? It's not his fault. Be angry at the person selling, not the person that got offered to buy the cards.
Yeah. Just imagine if they say, okay, you can't do any of the deals because you didn't get a table. And then they said, okay, you got to do the deals outside, you got to go elsewhere. And then the person gets mugged or something like that, or, so some sort of weird thing that goes on. So if it's in that area, I think it's a little better because then, if you have a negative experience, goes on social media, then they'll be like, should we go to this show?
Exactly. And that's why it's weird from the promoter's perspective. Like, just have the conversation in private and just say, you know what, you can't do that to the lady. Ask her to leave. But it's just a weird situation, the whole thing. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe the guy just had a really bad day and was just pissed off, or maybe he got the information secondhand because all the things he accused Ryan of, right? He used a very specific set of words saying, this is how you sell at a card show and save money. I was like, that wording wasn't used anywhere in the video. It wasn't used in the thumbnail, wasn't used in the title. Like, what are you talking about, mate?
Yeah. Let's read a few more comments before we head off. TW says Nat Turner is not the smartest. We'll see which celebrity friends of his he gives 10 grades to the hot. No. What about trade nights? Yeah, that's a good question. What about trade nights? So it's only allowed at trade nights. So
most card shows have like a designated area for trading. Anyway, at least I know they do in Australia. I'm not sure if they do that in the States, but still, like I said, you want people to be excited to go to card shows and interact with each other. Like, why would you push this weird approach on them? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you pissed off Ryan, and now he's no longer going to be there.
Yep.
So you lost him. All right. A few more comments. LT says, I love Dustin, aka Sports Car Dad, rant on big influencers yesterday. Yeah, that was a good video, no doubt.
Yeah, he channeled a lot of Rudy from Alpha Investments. You should check him out. I think you'll like his content. Very smart dude, worked in financial services. Like I said, he was an investment banker. He's got lots of thoughts. What's happening in Magic the Gathering at the moment, and a lot of that stuff like transfers over to sports cards as well.
For sure. And we'll read this last comment. Game Time Gallery. We've already seen the celebrities getting PSA 10s. Aoki, Mike Trout. I haven't looked at that, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point.
Yeah, no. Well, especially if you look at some of the stuff that's happened historically within the hobby, right? Where you've got trimming scandals, all this sort of stuff, manipulation from these heads of companies. Like, nothing's out of the realm of possibility. And that's what people need to understand. Anything can happen, good or bad.
For sure. Any final thoughts you want to head off with before we sign off?
Nothing particular other than, like, just keep asking questions, right? I say that all the time. Just keep asking questions. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking these kinds of questions and holding these companies accountable. You've got card points saying to people, you know what? Don't ask questions over the internet. Do your research. It's like, no, get angry at the grader for missing the mistake in the first place. Like, the owners shouldn't fall back on us to sort of make things right. It should be on the companies, and these companies are getting away with a lot of bullshit. So it's not good enough. Ask the question. That's all I want to say.
For sure. Wait, last two things. Hobby Shark is in the house. Maybe we should do a live stream on IG one of these days. Hobby Shark. That'd be great. And Vendora Warlock, what up? This is the dude that asked the question to Curator. Yeah, so I did ask it. So thanks for pointing that out. And Sports Card Radio, nice job. Thanks for watching, Ryan. I think, is that you? But all right.
Twins. They did a good video this morning on Blaze, which was good.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. I'm like, oh, well, what receipts do they have on Blaze?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what's next. So you got me
what's next?
Hooked, line and sinker, boys.
Yep. All right, Dan, thanks for coming on despite your cold. So appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
Yep. Let's do this another time.